Hello and welcome to Talking Europe. I'm at the offices of the European Commission in Paris, and today we are speaking to the new EU Commissioner for Climate Action, Wopke Hoekstra. He's actually just come into this job after a somewhat fractious nomination process. Before that, he was the Foreign Minister of the Netherlands and the Deputy Prime Minister of that country. Mr. Hoekstra, thank you so much for being our guest on Talking Europe.
Thank you.
And I believe this is your first interview to an international news channel since you started your job.
I'm sorry to say, but you're almost the first.
All right, almost the first. So just a quick question about the situation in the Middle East, which is obviously preoccupying the Commission, the Parliament and the EU Council at the moment. What do you think the EU should be doing beyond making statements?
Well, you know, what we see is absolutely horrible. This is a situation we haven't seen in the region for a very long time, with truly devastating things happening to completely innocent civilians, including children. So what we should do is, on the one hand, always stand with Israel and help them out in this difficult situation. And of course, whenever possible, but that is more up to the president and up to Borrell, see what we can do in this situation that actually affects the whole region. And which creates another difficult geopolitical situation in a context that already has been much more difficult than let's say 10, 20 years ago.
Let's talk about your nomination as Climate Action Chief in the European Commission. As I said, it was a slightly complicated process. There was a delay. You were approved, of course, 279 votes in favour among MEPs, 173 against, 33 abstentions. Was that a disappointing score if you just look at the numbers? Were you hoping for more MEPs to vote in favour?
No, actually, I think it is also, if you look at what the numbers commissioners are typically getting, and you see that this is a topic that is actually preoccupies many in Parliament, I think these numbers are decent. And what I will do in any case is reach out to people, of course, in the center, but also to the left and to the right, because I think a topic like this that is so truly transformational for our societies also deserves as broad a support as we can get.
People still seem to be concerned, despite the fact that you were approved, about your past work for Shell. What are you going to do going forward to reassure those people that that's not incompatible with your new job?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, that was until, I think, 2004. So not exactly the Stone Age, but quite a while ago. And what I will do, as I was doing when I was a minister in the Netherlands, I will be absolutely, completely independent and make sure that, we will also speak truth to power when that is acquired. And that is what we have to do. This is one of the major challenges the Union and, in fact, humanity is facing. And I feel it is up to us to continue to be ambitious and to take our people along in Europe, but of course also across the globe.
When you say reaching out, that's obviously important because the left in the European Parliament particularly doesn't seem very keen on you still. So what do you mean by reaching out exactly? What does that involve?
Well, I'm more optimistic. I think if you read the statements of the Social Democrats and the Greens, I think they overwhelmingly have supported my nomination. But I think actually reaching out is something we should do at various levels. First of all, within the European Union, where many citizens, on the one hand, see that we need to go through with this transformation. At the same time, they are quite often, and understandably, they're worried about the effects it might have on their lives. So I think that is tremendously important. Secondly, of course, working across the political spectrum. And then third, reaching out to our friends across the global stage.
So the big priority now for you is the COP28 in Dubai. What are your goals and targets for that?
To be honest with you, that will be an exceptionally steep climb. Given all the geopolitical ramifications that we see, given that already climate change and climate action, I should say, is not the easiest of topics to discuss with the whole global community. And yet, I think there's no alternative than dealing with this together. So that would mean a lot of diplomatic outreach. And that is why I'm here this week in France, in Madrid, in Berlin. But I will be traveling the globe to make sure we talk to as many friends as possible to drive home the message that failure is not an option.
When you say a steep climb, you're saying that some of the big global powers, you sense that they're not moving towards where you want them to be in Dubai?
Well, you know that even if you look at the European Union, you see that countries hold different positions. But if you then zoom out, you see that, regardless of whether you look at Africa or Latin America, the US, or Asia, countries have various positions, various stages in their development, a different energy mix, and that makes up for a complicated conversation with almost 200 countries.
And what are you going to take as the EU's likely pledge there in terms of the 2040 target for reducing emissions?
Yeah, just to be clear, 2040 was a discussion we had extensively in Parliament, and I do want to make sure the European Union is going to be ambitious on that, but that is actually for the beginning of for next year, 2024, and first and foremost, that is an internal European discussion to be had. And again, I will be forward-leaning on that one. I think to make a success out of COP, it has to be crystal clear that we have to do more in terms of mitigation, more in terms of adaptation. My desire would be to really operationalize loss and damage. But of course, that is a package. You cannot have one without the other.
Yeah. In terms of completing the next stages of the Green Deal, which is obviously a big part of your work, you know that some political forces in Europe have called for an environmental pause. Where do you stand on that, and what are the next things that you want to complete? For example, the nature restoration law or microplastics?
I think there is no alternative for continuation, ambition, and outreach. And of course, you always have to take feasibility into account with whatever measure you're taking. And by the way, that is one of the reasons we will spend significant money in Europe in the years to come on solidarity, to make sure that people whose job might change or whose environment might be affected are actually helped out and can have a bright future, even though that might be in different jobs than they might be having today.
So what is this the Green Pact 2.0 that you've been talking about? What is that exactly?
Well, that is clearly linked to an ambitious target for 2040. That is clearly linked to not only doing the right stuff in Europe, but also making sure we bring the rest of the world along. I think if you zoom out a bit, you could say we actually have three things to do. One is be very ambitious on our own climate action for 2040 and of course beyond, and driving down the emissions. The second thing we need to do is make sure we do much more with the global community, because the number that stuck with me is actually 93% of emissions now takes place outside of Europe. That doesn't mean at all that we shouldn't drive down to 7% as quickly as we can, but there is more to be done. And the third, and that is a difficult thing also technologically, we need to make more work of removals. So removing the carbon that is already in the air.
Carbon capture, this is, isn't it?
And well, removal is actually something where you
take it out.
You manage to take it out.
I've got a question for you about herbicides. I'm sure you've heard that in France, a committee has linked for the first time the use of glyphosate to the malformation that a teenager is suffering and has been suffering for 16 years because his mother essentially ingested this when she was pregnant. So it's the first time that a causal link has been actually found. That's quite a big change in the whole conversation. Does it mean that there should be a ban on glyphosate? What do you think about all that?
You know, I'm insufficiently familiar with the specifics of that case, so I don't think it is wise to comment on that. I think what we do see is that all these things are actually interlinked. Clearly, climate change and ecology, but also health. We understand much better than maybe some 10, 20 years ago how all of this is interlinked. And that the stuff we do in terms of climate action typically also has benefits in a healthier life for all of us across the Union and in fact across the globe.
So when the European Commission proposed, I know you weren't in the job at that point, but in September the Commission proposed extending the use of glyphosate. Where would your position be on that?
Again, I think that is not up for me to comment on right now. Then I would first want to familiarize myself, particularly because, as you know, when things reach courts in the European Union, there is always a political discussion to be had as well. Those things are typically then very sensitive. So rather than making a sweeping statement now, which is you will enjoy, but I think it is good to first look at the facts.
Okay, well, let's end on that note, and thank you so much, Mr. Hoekstra, for being our guest on Talking Europe. And I will be back in a few minutes with part 2 with my panel of MEPs from the European Parliament in Brussels, so don't go away.